from 2010 to 2011, some low and middle income countries increased their HIV investments by 15%. What this shows is that these countries are gradually taking on the responsibility themselves instead of relying on international funding. Now, in order to sustain the AIDS response globally, a new era of shared responsibility is fundamental. Now, this requires stronger efforts from both the domestic and the international partners working together to ensure sustainable and innovative sources of funding. So we are now witnessing a new partnership of shared responsibility and global solidarity. We are now making use of civil society, the faith-based organizations, the education ministries, and the sports organizations. Now, in the Asia and the Pacific region, the AIDS response has reached a critical juncture. While the gains have been impressive in the response campaign, the epidemic still outpaces the response, with almost 2 new HIV infections for every person who starts ART. The HIV epidemic may be low, but the high prevalence of sexually transmitted infections, STIs for short, such as chlamydia, syphilis, and gonorrhea, remain high and are a cause of great concern. This needs to be constantly addressed and advocated for and reversed. Now, in the Oceania region, apart from Papua New Guinea, HIV remains low in the rest of the Pacific Island countries and territories. But again, it must be constantly addressed, advocated for, and reversed. There is no room for complacency, and complacency is the biggest enemy in the response campaign. Now, for the Asia and the Pacific region to reach the 3 zeros, countries in the region, including our own, Fiji, must do the following: must make high-impact HIV prevention a top priority. 2, speed up and sustain access to ART. 3, advance human rights and gender equality. And 4, continue to spread the response for prevention. Now, these 4 musts are necessary in order to counter the male clients of sex workers, an estimated 75 million men across Asia and the Pacific region, who are the key determinants in both the spread and the magnitude of HIV/AIDS epidemic, since they are the biggest single group that transmits HIV to their regular intimate partners. Now, these are men whose jobs regularly and for long periods of time separate them from their regular sex partners or their wives, particularly the latter, like long-distance truck drivers, fishermen, uniformed personnel, and migrant workers, to name but a few. Now, the figure of 75 million may appear to be mind-boggling and alarming to you, but it is based on thorough UNAIDS research and estimation. Now, it should be noted that each of the other 11 regions around the world, not only the Asia-Pacific region, the other 11 regions have experienced the same pattern of behavior. What does that say? The picture is very clear to all of us, just how big the problem that we have. Also clear is the enormous response effort that is required by all of us to combat and to eradicate HIV/AIDS. Now, for the Asia and the Pacific region To have a successful response, these demands need to be constantly considered. Committed political leadership, strong national ownership and partnership that includes people living with key populations at higher risk. Increased and sustained resources for HIV focus on key populations at higher risk. Expanded access to affordable drugs, diagnostics, and prevention commodities. An end to laws, policies, and practice that fuel stigma and discrimination, that violate rights, and that hinder effective AIDS responses. Now, in the Asia and the Pacific region, the vast majority of people living with HIV are in 11 countries: Cambodia, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, and Vietnam. There are people living with HIV in almost all the other countries. But epidemics can emerge even in countries where HIV levels were previously low, for example, the Philippines. But governments of the countries where HIV levels are currently low must be ever vigilant and be ready to react to the first warning signs. Countries that have the worst records of HIV/AIDS around the world were once like us, with low prevalence. But what did they do? They ignored the stark warning signs and were slow to heed the advice of experts. And their inaction and their pedestrian pace when reacting finally have paid dearly in many lives, and in some countries, in millions of lives. The HIV epidemic is still driven by specific behaviors that put people at higher risk of HIV infection. New infections remains concentrated amongst people, key populations at higher risk. People who buy and sell sex, people who inject drugs, men who have sex with men, and transgender people. Today, more people than ever before now have access to HIV services across the Asia-Pacific region. But most countries are still a long way from achieving the universal access targets for HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support. Now, let us look at Oceania and the available details of each country from 2009 to 2012. I will highlight the countries that have had dramatic increases or decreases and the different infection rates, so that you will become aware of the situation in the other countries in the Pacific and compare them to our own in Fiji. Now, the Cook Islands has a population of 15,576. They had their first case in 1997. Between 2009 and 2012, they had one case. They have a total of 3. Kiribati has a population of 102,697. They had their first case in 1995. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 1. Their total is 55. New Caledonia has a population of 252,331. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 44. Their total is 402. Papua New Guinea has a population of 7,059,650. They had their first case in 1995. They had 3,711 in 2009, 4,134 in 2010, 1,023 in 2011, and 1,013 in 2012. Their total is 31,600 Samoa has a population of 186,617. They had their first in 1994. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 5. Their total is 23. The Solomon Islands has a population of 553,254. They had their first case in 1994. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 8. Their total is 20. Tonga has a population of 103,682. They had their first in 1996. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 3. Their total is 19. Tuvalu has a population of 11,206. Their total is 11. Vanuatu has a population of 251,748. They had their first case in 2002. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 5. Their total is 9. The Federated States of Micronesia has a population of 102,697. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 1. Their total is 38. Guam has a population of 192,090. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 11. Their total is 244. The Marshall Islands have a population of 54,999. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 1. Their total is 25. Nauru has a population of 10,185. Their total is 2. The Northern Marianas have a population of 63,517. Their total is 34. Palau has a population of 20,643. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 1 case. Their total is 10. American Samoa has a population of 66,692. They have a total of 3 cases. French Polynesia has a population of 271,831. Between 2009 and 2012, they had 22 cases. Their total is 355. Now, Wallis and Futuna has a population of 13,193. They have a total of 2 cases. 5 countries in the region, the Cook Islands, Nauru, Niue, Pitcairn, and the Tokelau, had no cases of HIV during the period 2009 to 2012. 3 of them, Niue, whose population is 1,446, Pitcairn, whose population is 66, and Tokelau, whose population is 1,162, have never had any reported HIV cases in their history, and long may they remain so. The primary mode of HIV transmission in Oceania is unprotected sexual contact with 52%. Through homosexual contact, 27%, and by male-to-male sexual contact, and 5% with injecting drug use. But the great concern is the 63 cases transmitted via mother-to-child or vertical transmission. There were 28 infections that occurred prior to 2001. 20 occurred between 2001 and 2005, and 15 occurred between 2006 and 2011. Now, in an era where drugs are available that can prevent mother-to-child transmission, there should be no such infections at all, and that must be our aim.